Okie doke, year 10, for your exam, year 10 exam coming up, we're just going to work through the rest of this booklet. There's a PDF copy of this booklet on Bromcom as we speak. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the write and account questions. So this is just to complete if you were not here last lesson, or just a recap if you were in lesson. And we're going to just go through what we do for our write and account question, because this is an 8 marker and you are going to get later on in the week a write and account question. So it's really important that we're au fait with what we do with this question. And this one is all about changes, really. All right. So this is all about changes, and it's write an account about how something changed, usually changing after the Norman conquest. So the things that we need to consider are the following. What were things like in Anglo-Saxon England? How did the Normans change it? And crucially, why did they change it? So that links very much with what we're talking about here in terms of those 7-up big themes. So is the reason that the Normans are changing these things because of Normanization? Is it because they want to centralize power? Is it because of patronage or divine right, or any of those things? Those rhythms, remember, that beat throughout the whole story. And of course, what we want here is we want our mark scheme here, and that tells us exactly what we need. The crucial thing is that we are looking for facts. Okay, so knowledge is going to be absolutely crucial in this story. So if we move on and look at the question that is in your booklet. Okay, so it's write an account of the ways in which the English church changed after the Norman conquest. So one thing that we might talk about is the leadership of the church changed. We're talking about bishops, etc., etc. And the second way we might thing we might talk about is we might talk about the churches in terms of the architecture specifically. So when we think about the leadership, remember we're thinking of 2 ways in which it changed, and we want to compare the Anglo-Saxons to after the Norman conquest. So who was in charge of the church in England under the Anglo-Saxons? It was, of course, the Archbishop of Canterbury. And that was Stigand. He was our Archbishop of Canterbury. Now, of course, he was a pluralist. He actually had more than one job. And remember, the Normans hated the corruption in the English church. Pluralism was part of it, but also simony was a problem, as was clerical marriage, etc., etc. So those are some of the problems. And what do the Normans want to do? They want to reform the Church of England, or the Church in England. Clarify that, the Church of England is something very different. So what is it that happens after the Norman conquest? Well, our key figure is Lanfranc, and he is the one leading the reform, and he is William's spiritual confidant and closest advisor. So Lanfranc wants to reform it, and one of the first things he does is he oversees the primacy of Canterbury. What that means is this job here, the Archbishop of Canterbury, becomes the most important role. The primate in the English church. Right? So the primate of the English church. So before the Norman conquest, he shared that role with the Archbishop of York. But Lanfranc changes it. Why does he change it? Because he wants to centralize power. And he wants to oversee that reform of the church in England. And this begins a process of the removal of Anglo-Saxons replaced by Normans. That's what it's all about. And he wants to replace those with Normans, like so. So we can see that already some of our big themes are coming in here with this idea of Normanization and centralization. Because what they're doing is essentially finish that off. What they're doing is they are making the church in England Norman. They are putting their values, their way of worshipping at the heart of the changes that they're doing. So we will then move on to churches, the architecture. So we could talk about that in terms of churches being small under the Anglo-Saxons. They are made of wood and they are made of simple style. So really quite square, which is kind of an odd thing to say, but little Anglo-Saxon churches really are quite blocky and quite square in how they're constructed. They're very simple, they're not ornate, they're not particularly detailed, but that changes under the under the Normans, begging your pardon, with the construction of new cathedrals. And they would have been in towns across the country. So places like Durham, places like Hereford, places like Winchester, new cathedrals were built. And why were they built? Well, it shows off that Norman architecture. Just had a bit of a brain fog there. And it's that Romanesque style. So we're talking archways, we're talking columns, etc., etc. Windows, symmetrical patterns, all of those things. So we can see that architecture in terms of that Romanesque style. And furthermore, we've got this idea of that divine approval of the conquest. What do I mean by that? It's that idea that God approves of the Norman conquest. If you are literally building physical symbols that show that the Normans are religious and the Normans have taken over different towns, what better way to demonstrate that God approves of your conquest? So it is about control, and it is about that psychological impact on the English people. Essentially, the Normans are here and they are here to conquer. So if we take a look at our actual question, so there is a model answer here, like so. And this is something that you may want to use for a little bit of inspiration for your write an account question for your Year 10 exam. So what I would do is I would get two colours, like so, and think about the following. Think about that first colour. What was it like under the Anglo-Saxons? And then you want that second colour after the Norman conquest. So what you want to do is take a look at this example answer, and you want to do that as follows. And you can either pause the video and do that, or you can just hold on for a few moments because I'm going to do it for you. So the first thing that we're talking about is that change to the leadership of the churches. So that's what that first paragraph is all about. So under the Anglo-Saxons, we can see that all of that is talking about that leadership of the church, talking about the Archbishop of Canterbury, talking about Stigand, talking about the corruption in the church. But of course, this question is about change. And this bit here, the bulk of this talks about the change. And that's crucial because that is what the question is asking you about. All of this section here is talking about the changes that the Normans did to the English church. Now we're rocking on up towards 10 minutes now. So for your final bit of prep is you want to complete a model paragraph of your own. So remember, you want under the Anglo-Saxons, after the Norman conquest. We did our table earlier on in this vid. You may want to use that for some inspiration, but you can also look at your part 3 knowledge builder on the changes of the Norman church, of the English church by the Normans, that might give you some inspiration. I'm not going to write this. You could do this in your own time just to practice how it may look. The crucial thing is that you are looking for under the Anglo-Saxons and under the Normans. That's crucial because that is a really easy way to construct an answer to this change question. So I'll leave that to you. Really looking forward to your exam. I hope you are too. Bye for now.